Hi everyone, it's Shar. Welcome back to my channel. It has been quite a while since I've last done a book haul. And I'm gonna be honest with you, the books that I'm about to show you have been sitting here for quite a while just because I don't know the summary for all of them. So I was like, how am I gonna do this book haul without talking about the books? There's a lot of books anyway. If I told you the summary for every single book, we would be here for an hour. So instead, if I know what the summary is of the book or have a general idea, I will tell you. And if I don't, well, Goodreads will be your best friend. By the way, I don't think you'll see my arms, but if you do, I got a really bad sunburn on vacation and I am peeling. So pretend that you don't see it. But without further ado, let's jump into the book haul where I have over 30 books, I'm sure, to show you. I was thinking of a way to categorize this. Let me close the window because you can probably hear that. I was thinking of a way to categorize this, and I think honestly the easiest way is just by like general categories for where they all fit in. So for example, I might have special editions and independent bookstore day. Think along those veins. So I'm gonna start with generally, I've collected these books over the past several weeks. To start with is a book that I got for free. This is Homicide in Hollow Hollow by the same author of Arsenic and Adobo. I know that she is a rough copy, but picture this. I'm in Miami. I'm hanging out with the confidant. My neighbor is sitting next to me on like a pool lounger. We're drinking. She's reading Homicide in Hollow Hollow. And I lean over and I tell her, oh, how do you like this book? It's on my TBR. I was actually just going to buy it from this bookstore I was at yesterday, but I ended up not buying it. What do you think? And she was like, you know what? I'm really enjoying it. I'm Filipino, so I love the representation in this, but I am not gonna take this with me. If I finish this before I leave, you can have it. So she gave it to me, hence why it's so rough. This book was packed with me on the plane to Panama and was around a lot of water. I don't know what this is about. I know it's a murder mystery, a cozy murder mystery, and I'm very, very excited to read it. Another murder mystery, we have Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murder. I have no idea what this is about, aside that it is an elderly woman who is like super nosy around her neighbors and some kind of murder happens and apparently she goes out and she tries to solve it. That is the extent of what I know, and that is all that I need to know. Nora Roberts goes off. Nora Roberts? Where did I get the name Nora Roberts? Nora goes off script. So this is actually from a failed Goodreads like chooses my TBR video. I ended up not doing this video, but I'm still interested in this book. I think it has a Hollywood setting. It's a writer who's having a hard time after a divorce and she ends up with some famous person. That summary could be completely wrong, but I think that that's roughly what this is about. It's often recommended in tandem with books like Thank You for Listening, which is also on my TBR. So I picked this up because it was on sale. The Dead Romantics. I think you know what this book's about. This book has a fair amount of popularity in BookTube, specifically with romance booktubers, but generally anyone. I've seen a lot of people read this book. This is about an editing assistant. No, she's a ghostwriter and her family are like undertakers. They own a morgue. Something happens. My girl can see ghosts. She ends up seeing the ghosts of this dude and apparently it is their love story. I love a paranormal romance, so I'm very into this, although I definitely have heard that it makes people cry. So emotionally, I must prepare for this book. Then I picked up also on sale, My Dearest Darkest. I don't know what this is about, although I think I picked it up because of Riley. I could be wrong about that. All I know is this is sapphic gothic horror. And if you know me, you know that's exactly the kind of book I like to read, so it is now mine. Georgie All Along was definitely a Bookstagram influence. I've seen so many people love this book. Again, it was on sale for like under $10, so I went ahead and picked it up. I don't know what it is about at all, so you and I will find out together at some point. This is How We Lose the Time War. This is for sure influenced by Riley. I know that this book is about these two agents who are like time traveling, and essentially they're trying to change events so that their individual like versions of reality can exist, or one can't exist if the other one also exists. So they're kind of enemies in that sense, and they start writing letters to each other because they're the only people they interact with. They don't interact with anyone else due to the nature of their job. And it's sapphic from what I understand. I know some people will love this book, so I'm very excited to read it. Also, I feel like it's important to note when I say that I don't know what these books are about, when I purchased the books, I was very much aware of what they're about. But if you're not new to my channel, then you know me and you know that I forget things very, very easily, especially when it comes to things like character names and plot if I haven't read the book. So I want to emphasize, I'm not buying these books blindly. When I bought them, I knew. I just kind of intentionally forget about it because I like going into books knowing as little as possible. So I hope that makes sense. Sadie is actually a book that I have already read and loved. I listened to the audiobook of this. I absolutely adored it, but I borrowed it from my library. I don't often reread books, but especially as I've come to know my reading as an adult reader, there are definitely books that I adore and that I would love to read again. So I saw Sadie on sale for about $5-6. So I went ahead and picked it up because this is a book that I love and I would love to have on my shelves for rereading purposes. Opposite of Always by Jason Reynolds. This is a book that I picked up from Book Off, as you can see. I saw this quite a bit on Pango Books, but Pango Books, you pay for shipping, so it makes the book more expensive. So when I was at Book Off and I saw this, I picked it up. This is a love story, but our main male character here is stuck in a time loop. Based on the summary, essentially what happens is that he meets this amazing girl, they fall in love, but she dies. And he is stuck in that loop, reliving all the moments that led up to her death. I believe I've seen a movie with a similar premise that I really loved, but in general, I just kind of love that idea and that plot line. It kind of reminds me of like soulmates across time. It's not that because it's a time loop, but I just really loved the summary of this, so I picked it up. Also, I said Jason Reynolds, it's Justin Reynolds. Then I picked up The Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. Last year or 2 years ago, I read Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, and I really, really loved their work and their writing. This is often pitched as like Percy Jackson meets The Hunger Games, and I'm just so freaking excited to read this. That's all I know. Percy Jackson meets The Hunger Games, and I was a Percy Jackson teen, so of course I picked it up. By the way, if you're seeing this blue and you're wondering what that is on my brand new shirt, I was making cupcakes with my 3-year-old niece, and I didn't know that she had icing all over her shirt and her hair. So when we were cuddling up for her nap time, she spread it all over my shirt. That's what that is. Nothing to See Here, which I picked up for $2 on Pango Books. This is a story about a woman who becomes like a nanny / caretaker for these young children who spontaneously combust. That is all I know. I know it's a favorite for so many people. It's been out for quite a while, but the plot intrigues me, and I've heard that it's actually very like emotionally touching. So I'm ready to perhaps be devastated. I don't know. Maybe it's heartwarming. Don't know. Just ready to feel all the feelings. And besties, this is my first ever official book of the month pick, by which I mean you've seen all of the book of the month books up on my shelf many times. In fact, you'll see more throughout this haul, but those are books that I buy secondhand. Pango Books was running a promotion where you could get a book for $5, no shipping. So I picked up The Last Word by Taylor Adams, which is a new release for $5. This is the Troop Book Club pick. So I'm reading it for that, which I need to get to soon because I'm realizing we're halfway through May. Oh my gosh. So The Last Word is the story of this woman who reads a book and she doesn't really like it. She doesn't enjoy it. So she leaves like a pretty meh review on Amazon, and the author sees it and is like, take this down, it's bad for my sales. And she's like, no, this is my opinion on the book. I'm going to stick by that and have my integrity as a reviewer. They go back and forth, and said author starts to stalk her. And perhaps she is in danger. I don't know anything outside of that, but that sounds absolutely terrifying, mostly because personal fears. But I'm excited to see everyone's opinion about this during the Book Troop live show, which is either at the end of this month or early next month. And the next book in this pile is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This is the story of a young woman who had a falling out with her best friend, and they both were huge fans of this feminist horror novelist called Rosa. Rosa is hosting a once-in-a-life writing retreat with this massive deal where essentially the manuscript that she thinks is the best, the author of said said manuscript will get $100,000 publishing deal. And being published is very difficult. So they all go, except that Rosa is really fucking erratic and weird shit is going on. Someone disappears in the middle of a snowstorm. So it is a thriller, although I would say it also has a lot of horror elements. It's not quite as fast paced as I normally expect a thriller to be. I actually already read this book because it was a Literally Dead book club pick for last month, I believe. I really enjoyed this book. I give it 4 stars. I now own it, which I'm glad because that means it's going on to my favorite shelf. I picked up The Fiancé Farce by Alexandria Belfleur. Again, I have already read this book, as you can see from the tabs. I actually vlogged me reading this book, so you will see my thoughts in an upcoming video. But The Fiancé Farce is a marriage of convenience romance story. We have a woman named Tansy who owns a bookstore, but her cousin is marrying her ex of sorts, and it's really uncomfortable because the ex is actually an absolute fucking dickhead, period. So when her stepmom is like, you have to come to these events, Tansy lies and says, oh, I have a girlfriend, her name is Gemma, we're really busy, we're just kind of enjoying our relationship right now, I won't be able to make it. So whenever they're like, come to the event, she's like, no, I'm with Gemma. She panics and she's just like, looks over at a romance book cover, and the cover model is Gemma. She assumes Gemma's never gonna hear about this, but Gemma is actually related to her ex-boyfriend. Gemma hears about this and she actually just inherited this huge like journalism corporation. They own a ton of magazines. She wants to be the leader of it, but the rules for her inheritance is that she cannot actually claim it until she is married, and it has to be a real and legitimate marriage. So when Gemma hears that Tansy says that they have been dating for the past 6 months, she's like, great, marriage of convenience. She offers Tansy the money to buy the bookstore her family owns but her stepmother's trying to sell. I make this very convoluted. Marriage of convenience. It was very cute. I also picked up Little Thieves. This was influenced by someone. I don't know who, but this cover is absolutely beautiful. So it was on sale and I picked it up. Crescent City. I picked this up for a video. I ended up not reading it for the video, and that's all I'm gonna say. I picked up House of Hollow, which was definitely influenced by Cindy from With Cindy. I don't know about this book, but I know that it's like magical realism of sorts. This cover is gorgeous. Again, this is one of the books where I intentionally forgot the summary of it so I can go into it completely neutral. Another book influenced by With Cindy, this was on sale at Target, so I paid like $8 for this. The Inheritance Games, I don't know the full summary of it, but there is this girl, she gets this letter from someone she's never heard of. She's claiming this kind of inheritance. She goes to the house where there's these 3 brothers and they're like,
yo, our grandfather was absolutely batshit fucking crazy. He loved mind games.
And this story is about her trying to unpiece whatever clues the grandfather left behind and figure out why she's been left all these things. I don't fucking know. But I trust Cindy's opinion, and this actually has so much love and hype in the bookish community in general. So we'll see what I think. Ignore this Barnes & Noble sticker. I did not pick this up from Barnes & Noble. I bought this secondhand at Book Off. This is 56 Days. So this is a pandemic horror story or a pandemic thriller, I think, where these 2 people are dating and they're very early into a relationship, and then the pandemic hits and they decide that they're gonna quarantine together. But it turns out they don't really know as much about each other as they thought. And in this book, we are several months into the future where there is a dead body in the apartment. We don't know who's dead. We don't know what happened, but this story takes us through that experience. This book came out a couple of years ago, I think, or a year ago. So I just like the premise of it. I picked up Mother Thing, influenced by Elizabeth from Reading Riley. Feminist horror is pretty much all I know about this. Another book that I picked up because I liked the cover, I liked the reviews. Again, at some point I knew what this book was about, but I don't anymore. The only Colleen Hoover book I will likely ever read. This is Verity. Verity is different than Colleen's other books from what I understand, that it's definitely more of a thriller in that I don't know exactly what it is, but this woman goes to someone's house where someone was an author and she's being hired to write something, but Verity, I believe, is actually a character in the book, and there are things going on and secrets being kept that the person that's been hired is trying to unlock. That is the shittiest summary you're ever going to hear, but that is all that I know, and I know that it's very creepy and has scared quite a few people. My Sister the Serial Killer. This is a small book that I have been curious about for a long time. My Sister the Serial Killer follows a woman whose sister is, you guessed it, a serial killer. So the sister doesn't know that right away. Essentially, each time these serial killing sister has said in the beginning, like, oh, it was an accident. Oh, he was doing this, he was doing that. So the sister helps serial killing sister kind of get away with it until she realizes that her sister has a pattern and perhaps her sister is a serial killer. Our main character, when she develops feelings for this man, she becomes concerned that her sister is going to come after this man just because of her pattern and how she knows that her sister likes to kill. I have no idea what Love is a Revolution is about. I know that it is a young adult romance. I believe this girl's first relationship. I think it's very cute, but again, mostly I just really love the color of it, and I love seeing a book centering Black love, so I'm very excited to read this. All right, that transitions us to the next section, which is the books that I picked up on Independent Bookstore Day. This was a couple of weeks ago. I wasn't able to go that specific day, but I went a couple of days before, and I just went to some independent bookstores around New York City. I went to McNally and Jackson's down in the Lower East Side, and I picked up Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This takes place in the same world as Part of Your World, which I am reading, but I'm not done with. I know that Naomi from Naomi's Library really loved this book. I've seen so many people love this book. I know that it's also heartbreaking as much as Part of Your World is, but I gave in to the hype and I picked this book up, especially because it was Independent Bookstore Day and I was happy to support an independent bookseller. McNally and Jackson Books, by the way, has multiple locations throughout New York. I think there's one in Brooklyn and several in Manhattan. And then the other bookstore that I hit up was You and Me Books in Chinatown. I picked up The Hollow Places by T. King Fisher. This is an interesting choice for me. I picked this up because of Katie, I think from Katie Colson. I read The Hollow Ones by T. King Fisher and I actually didn't like that, and I was gonna swear off T. King Fisher, but Riley loves T. King Fisher so much and I think we have very similar reading taste, and I know that Katie really enjoyed this book as well, so I went ahead and picked it up, especially because the consensus is that a lot of people who love T. King Fisher don't necessarily love The Hollow Ones. So I'm gonna read The Hollow Places. I don't know a lot about this, but it's a girl on a mission. And the final book that I picked up from You and Me Books on Independent Bookstore Day was Sign Here. This is a book that has gotten a lot of love on the booktube community. It is a book of the month book, but of course I picked it up from You and Me Books secondhand. This is the story of a being who works in hell, and this person, he's about to secure this deal or something that's like a big deal for him. If he can get this family member in this family who he's worked with for centuries, he gets some kind of promotion. So it's about him going to this family and trying to convince this person to sign over their soul so he can get this promotion. Apparently it's funny and also has quite a bit of emotional depth in here. So I'm very excited to read this, as I am all the books on this list. Our final two sections. First, RIP to Book Depository. This is the first time I've ever used Book Depository. I actually ordered these books a couple of weeks before the announcement that they were permanent closing was put out, but these books got delivered right before then, so RIP to Book Depository. They don't exist anymore. So I did pick up a few books from them. First one was Influenced by Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin. This is The Haunting of Evelyn Jones, which is a middle grade horror story. I fucking love a ghost story, so of course I picked this up. The story to this is that I had been looking in the US for this book for over a fucking year. It does not exist. This book, I believe, is published solely in the UK, maybe? I don't know, but it's almost impossible to find here in the States, so I picked it up on Book Depository. I also picked up Rules for Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall. If you are new here, I read These Fleeting Shadows by Kate Alice Marshall at the beginning of the year. It is one of my favorite books ever. I just fucking loved it. Now I want to read everything that Kate Alice Marshall has ever written. Rules for Vanishing, I don't know a lot about. I believe it's either middle grade or young YA about a character who lives in this world where these girls disappear, vanish in this forest, and she's trying to figure out exactly what happens. That's a shit summary. That's even not a perfectly accurate summary, but that's what I know. Influenced by Riley. This whole book should be called Books I Bought Because of BookTube. If you still recognize me, this book has been on my TBR for quite a while. I absolutely love this cover. If you still recognize me, I believe is a sapphic story about a girl who is like navigating her sexuality in her relationship, and then someone that she knew in her childhood comes back and she's trying to navigate her feelings for said person. It's coming of age, it is queer, and of course I picked picked it up. And the final book that I picked up from Book Depository is the UK edition of Lessons in Chemistry. This was 100% influenced by Mel from Mel Reads. I was on her Patreon live shows when she was reading this, and she just like loved it so much. So I picked it up. I specifically got the UK edition of it because the author has spoken out before about how she doesn't like the US cover and doesn't feel that it's representative of the story and the main character in the story. Plus the UK cover is actually prettier than the US cover, I believe. I don't know what the story is about. I believe it's about a woman in STEM and her trying to navigate being within that field and balancing everything, but that's the extent of what I tentatively know. And now the moment I have been waiting for, my special edition books. I picked up Gallant by V.E. Schwab, this beautiful special edition, which I picked up secondhand on Pango Books for about $20. You already know that I have read Gallant. I loved Gallant. It is a 5-star book for me, so I picked it up again for rereading purposes, and it's gonna sit on my 5-star reading shelf. Gallant by V.E. Schwab is a story of a young girl who is orphaned. She is living somewhere that is not the best for her. One day she gets a letter from someone she's never heard of claiming to be her uncle. He says, "Come to Gallant, we've missed you." She goes to Gallant, but no one knows who she is and why her uncle has sent for her. Turns out her uncle died quite a while ago, and she is trying to navigate the situation that she's in. She doesn't want to get sent back to the home that she was living in previous to this point. And of course, Gallant is very weird. Gallant is the house. There are lots of suspicious things going on. Secrets. Her cousin is losing himself to madness. And this is a portal fantasy. So just pay close attention to the cover. Here is the sprayed edges a little bit closer up so you can see that they do go all the way around. This isn't necessarily a special edition, but hello to Fourth Wing, which I picked up because I was influenced by literally all of Bookstagram. When I tell you this book was everywhere, I haven't seen anyone give this book less than 5 stars. It is a story about dragons, a magical school, which is a interesting flag for me because you all know I don't like books set in academic settings or in school settings in general, but it's about dragons and training. It's fantasy. It is a brand new release. It recently came out. I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that this edition of the book with the sprayed and stenciled edges, it doesn't go all the way around. The spraying does, the stencils are only here, is only for the first run of the book. This book was honestly on sale on Amazon, which is the main reason I picked it up aside from all of the hype. I've never seen a fantasy get as high of a rating as this book got from the start, so we'll see what I think of it. Another book that I read and love, it is Hellbent by Miss Leigh Bardugo, the Waterstones edition, which I picked up for about $30 on Pango Books. Here she is in all of her beautiful glory. Look at this. If you read the book, you understand the reference of the rabbit and the snake. I can't tell you too much about Hellbent, but this is the sequel to Ninth House, which Ninth House and Hellbent follow a young woman named Galaxy Stern, Alex, as she goes by. Alex gets recruited by Yale because she can see ghosts to kind of monitor and look after the magic that these secret societies are using. It's very dark. There are lots of content warnings that you should look up. I freaking loved Hellbent. If you know what Hellbent is about and you know one of our main characters and what this main character is, you know exactly why I loved Hellbent. The Waterstones edition, which I was so happy to see for such a reasonable price. And the very last book that I am hauling for you in this video is Some Desperate Glory. I don't know what this is about at fucking all because this is actually the first ever book that I am receiving from my new subscription box, Illumicrate. I had Fairy Loot, which is where all of these special editions come from. But I canceled my Fairy Loot subscription and I switched over to Illumicrate to try that out. This is the first book that I received. It is, I believe, a sci-fi, if the cover is telling us anything. And look at how gorgeous these edges are. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. I believe Illumicrate actually focuses more on adult sci-fi and fantasy, so that's why I switched over to Illumicrate, even though I know Fairy Loot has their adult box. But here you go. This is the last book that I have picked up for the spring and summer season. That's a lie, because there's 2 more books that I just saw. I picked up The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin in my drunk book shopping video. I don't know what this book's about. I believe I heard someone at some point say that this is a high fantasy about gods and this woman who is trying to navigate it, and apparently there are some sexy times in here. And hello, that's backwards. And I also picked up An Elderly Lady is Up to No Good. This is the story of an elderly woman who I believe is getting up to some murderous business. This book is absolutely tiny. For reference, that's my hand. This is a short book that I've seen a few people love, so I picked it up. And that is actually all of the books that I picked up for the spring summer season. I am doing a reorganization of this bookshelf behind me, essentially for May and June and even July. I'm focusing really heavily on reading as many of these books as possible, but the books that I have read go to my read shelves as opposed to this priority TBR shelf. So I'm going to be focusing on that, and then I will be moving these books onto that shelf. But as always, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you being here and sticking around. Please subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!